There's a moment when the room goes quiet, but your chest doesn't. Someone else sighs, and something inside you tightens. Even though nothing was said, you notice it before you understand it. A subtle pull, like a weight shifting that doesn't belong to you, but somehow lands anyway. You don't react. You rarely do. You just feel it. And later, when you're alone, you wonder why your body feels tired when nothing actually happened. It's uncomfortable in a way that's hard to explain, not sharp, not loud, just constant. You've probably had this feeling since you were young. The sense that emotions don't stay where they start. They move, they drift, and somehow they end up inside you. You might not even remember the first time it happened, only that it feels familiar, too familiar. Someone is disappointed, and you feel the urge to fix the air around them. Someone is quiet, and your thoughts begin rearranging themselves, trying to soften whatever caused it. Someone is upset, and before you know why, there's guilt. Not because you did something wrong, but because something feels wrong, and your body assumes it must be yours to carry. Most people think this comes from kindness or sensitivity or caring too much. But that's not the part most people notice. There's something quieter happening underneath, something that doesn't announce itself as compassion, something that feels more like responsibility, a strange, automatic sense that emotional balance is your job. You don't say it out loud. You might not even think it clearly. It's more like an internal adjustment, a constant scanning, reading faces, listening between words, tracking shifts in tone, the way other people track weather. And when the atmosphere changes, something in you leans forward, not to help, not exactly to prevent something. There's a difference, even if it's hard to see. You might notice how quickly you apologize, even when no one asked for it, even when the situation doesn't really involve you. You might notice how uncomfortable you become around other people's sadness, not because it scares you, but because it feels unfinished, like a problem left open on your desk. You sit with it longer than you need to, longer than is healthy. And still, there's a feeling that you haven't done enough. That's where it starts to change. Because over time, this doesn't feel like generosity. It feels like fatigue, an emotional tiredness that sleep doesn't touch, a heaviness that comes from always being slightly ahead of the moment, trying to catch what might fall apart. You might pull back without knowing why. Avoid certain conversations, delay responses, not because you don't care, but because caring has started to feel like exposure. Every interaction becomes a calculation. If I say this, will it hurt them? If I don't say anything, will it still hurt them? And either way, there's tension. You might even feel resentful sometimes, quietly, ashamed of it, because on the surface, no one asked you to hold all of this. No one demanded it. And yet, it feels assigned. That's the confusing part. You can't point to a rule. You can't remember signing up. It just feels like if something emotional goes wrong, you should have noticed sooner. There's a moment many people miss, a subtle one. It's when you stop feeling alongside others and start feeling instead of them. You don't just sense their discomfort. You absorb it, translate it, carry it internally until it makes sense to you. And somewhere along the way, it stops feeling optional. That's not something you decide. It happens slowly, through repetition, through small moments where being aware felt safer than being surprised. Because surprise once meant something painful. But that's not the part most people notice. They see someone attentive, someone calm, someone who seems emotionally capable. They don't see the internal bracing, the way your nervous system stays half awake even during rest. They don't see how silence can feel louder than conflict. You might even be praised for it, for being understanding, for being easy to talk to. And you accept the words, but something inside tightens again. Because being easy to talk to often means being easy to lean on, and leaning turns into weight. There's something quieter happening underneath all of this, something that formed long before the words existed, a pattern. You learned early that emotions had consequences, not always dramatic ones, sometimes subtle. A parent who withdrew when upset, a room that felt colder when someone was disappointed. A shift that meant love became conditional on emotional harmony. You didn't analyze it. You adjusted. You learned to notice first, to smooth things before they hardened, to take responsibility for the atmosphere because atmosphere decided safety. And over time, that skill became automatic. It stopped being a response and became an identity you never named. This is the part that often stays hidden. Feeling responsible for other people's emotions isn't about wanting to help. It's about wanting to prevent rupture, because rupture once felt like loss. Not always loud loss. Sometimes the quiet kind, the kind where connection thins, where warmth fades. So where system learned to intervene early, to hold emotions before they spilled, to carry them so no one else had to. At first, it worked. You kept peace. You stayed connected. You avoided chaos, but that strategy didn't come with an off switch. As you grew, the environments changed, the stakes changed, but the internal rules stayed the same. If someone feels bad, I must have missed something. That's the realization that tends to arrive quietly, usually after exhaustion sets in. Not as a sudden insight, more like a sentence that forms slowly in the background. I feel responsible because once responsibility felt like survival. Not in words, in sensation. Your body still believes it's necessary, even when your mind knows better. This isn't about blame or weakness or being too much of anything. It's about a nervous system that learned connection through vigilance. That awareness changes something, not dramatically, not immediately, but it creates space. Space between someone else's emotion and your sense of obligation. Space to notice the impulse without obeying it. You may still feel the pull, the tightening, the urge to manage, but now there's a pause. And in that pause, something softens. You realize you can feel without carrying. That empathy doesn't require ownership. Not every emotional shift is a task. Not every silence is yours to fill. This understanding doesn't erase the habit. It doesn't make interactions easy. It just brings a quiet clarity, a sense that the weight you've been holding has a history. And histories can be acknowledged without being repeated. Toward the end, things slow down. You may still care deeply. You may still notice everything, but the edge dulls. There's less urgency, less self-blame. You begin to recognize where others end, and you begin. Not perfectly, but enough. And that's not a resolution. It's not a fix. It's simply the relief of understanding why your shoulders have been tense for so long, why rest felt incomplete, why connection felt heavy instead of nourishing. Nothing needs to be forced after that, just noticed. And sometimes that's enough to let the breath come back on its own.